There's a couple of stories on how it was caught, but my interpretation is how it was handed down to me is that Jack and Howard and George prawned the lakes, and I helped them with that many times. They used to bring the bait back in a sunken boat. A boat would be boarded over on the top and holes cut in the side with mesh, and they were the prawn traps. And they tie them up to the jetty, and they would net the prawns out of this boat, live, kicking, wrap them in a sawdust, and sell them by the pound to the customers. And of course, when you pulled a net full of prawns out of these traps, there was always byproduct. There was always a little herring and glass perch and all that sort of stuff that came out. And it was always just thrown out in the water because they're standing in knee-deep water right at the edge of the jetty. I've seen many times where you've seen big fish come right in and swirling around while you were cleaning the traps out. And this one day, old Jack was netting the prawns out, and the story is that he pulled out a fairly large piece of fish and he threw it in there, and there was an almighty splash. And next thing you know, that all of the dinghies were bumping up and down, tied up to the jetty. And he baited up a big hook and he tied it to the end of the jetty. Came back next morning, it was gone. They finally retrieved the line, pulled it in. It was a big shark. It was a big wobbegong shark. And he pulled it in and showed Jack, and Jack said, "That's not what I saw." He pinched some of Nana's clothesline wire as a trace and a really big hook. He baited it up. He put it on a stone and weighted it down at the end of the jetty, but he then tied a rope from that to one of the dinghies. And he came back early next morning. They came down in their pyjamas, I believe. The boat was gone. So they got into one of the putt-putts and they went putting up the river looking for their dinghy. They found the dinghy and he was being pulled along, hanging onto the rope in the front of the dinghy by the fish. And they passed a bloke going the other way. George waved to him and the bloke looked and he said, "But there's no putt-putt there. It was just in a dinghy." They wore it all out, dragged it back. Well, the photos I've got, that the fish is down on the other side of Public Jetty. All of the photos that were taken of it were taken by Mum's camera, little box brownie. The photos show they get this big fish and they land it. It was 450 pound or something like that. They strung it up into the old fig at the baths, and there are a lot of big gropers being caught. That year, only 2 years before and a couple of years after. That's about as big as they've been, but there's some nearly as big that have been caught in the river.